Hello and welcome back to Story Retold. I'm Calina, and today I am comparing the Nancy Drew PC mystery adventure game Treasure in the Royal Tower with the book that it was based on, Nancy Drew Mysteries number 128, The Treasure in the Royal Tower. Let's start with the location. The game and the book take place at the exact same spot, at Butter Ridge Ski Resort, specifically at Wickford Castle. In the book, the exterior is described a lot more, and the girls go outside quite a bit. Only this time in the book, Bess and George do accompany Nancy on this ski vacation. Nancy skillfully drives her blue Mustang off of the main road and onto the main drive, where at the entrance there is an iron gate with 2 stone pillars, and there's an intercom system on the left-hand side where Nancy buzzes in and the iron gate open up so that she can drive all the way to the castle. And you get an exterior view description of the castle from the outside. It is described as a light stone-colored castle with 4 towers, one on each side. George points out that the tower furthest from them looks very different compared to the other towers.
And I noticed one of the towers is totally different from the other ones.
Because that 4th tower is round where the other ones were square. The description of the interior of the castle is very similar to the game version of the castle. In the entry, there is a large reception hall having soaring stone walls, vaulted ceilings, and a large brass chandelier hanging from it, with a large mahogany desk in the center and a grand staircase behind it. It is of carved stone with dark blue carpet. In the book, behind the desk, there is a hallway. That hallway leads to some of the offices and other rooms. In both the game and the book, the lounge is just off to the side of the reception hall, and it has large, comfy sofas and armchairs around a fireplace, and that is where a lot of the guests in the book hang out. When the girls make their way up the 2 flights of stairs from the reception hall, they walk through large hallways with wood-paneled walls and doors with brass number plates at each one. The girls stay in room 304, which inside is described as being homey, has 3 casement windows, I believe that's what these are, and the 2 queen-size beds have thick patchwork quilts. When they are walking through the hallways, they do encounter a lot of dead ends, just like in the game.
Dead end. Yet another dead end.
One door in particular, which was half opened, they look in and climb the stairs behind that, which leads to nowhere. Another door leads to downstairs, which is dimly lit, and it leads to a brightly lit linoleum floor where they find the locker rooms.
It's too dark. I should take the elevator.
The locker rooms are described in the book as being black, and there are rows of benches for you to sit down and put your shoes on. Off to one side is a door that says Ski School Office. In this book, Nancy Drew's locker is number 73, and yes, she's able to get into it. Whereas in the game, there is a mix-up with the lockers, and that gives Nancy the excuse to snoop someone else's locker.
The combination is 517, but it's not working.
In the book, Nancy and George continue exploring while Beth takes a nice hot bath. Nancy and George, from the locker rooms, they find their way through the hallways down in the basement, and after a few twists and turns where there are no doors on the walls, they come to a hidden, not so obvious elevator. In the game, the elevator is right there in the locker rooms, conveniently placed for skiers to go up and down from the locker rooms to the rooms. But in the book, from the locker rooms, Nancy and George follow a winding hallway without any doors on the side of the walls, and that's when they come to a big metal box on the wall. They pass that by and look around the corner, and they find a service elevator for when the servants used them back in the old days of the castle when it was first built. And just like in the game, it has an accordion door. At first use of the elevator, Nancy and George do get stuck midway between floor 1 and floor 2, and they do have to help each other crawl out. They tried the emergency switch and it doesn't work. They help each other crawl out into the elevator shaft and climb up and reach the upper floor door and then get out that way. After they report the incident to the owners, they both go back downstairs to check out the metal elevator switch box, and yes, it is switched to off. And that's when their suspicion peaks that someone is messing with them.
Alley-oop!
There is no blizzard in the book like there is in the game.
It's like the North Pole out there.
Something that is not in the game is the castle dining room. In the book, food is often described as being served in the dining room, which is described as large, stately, and has tall windows along one wall, with a long dining room table and all these matching chairs alongside it. Now, the table is covered in white linen with silver place settings. Very fancy. In both the book and the game, Wickford Castle is described as having been built by Ezra Wickford, who visited France and imported a lot of pieces to build it in Wisconsin in the 1920s.
I have big plans to explore the castle. That Ezra Wickford, the original owner, must have been quite a character to have built such an extraordinary place. It's filled with strange, dead-end corridors, for one thing.
The dead ends had two purposes. They were meant to be connecting to other wings and other hallways as he added and built on to his castle, but he never got around to acquiring the rooms or the wings that he wanted. He was also paranoid about burglars, just like the game, and constructed dead ends and weird hallways to throw off burglars, because in the book, it is not mentioned in the game, but in the book, Ezra had another home that was burglarized a few times, and so that is what led to his paranoia.
Hello there, Dead End. My name's Nancy Drew.
It is also said that he used that as a way to conceal important rooms. Now, the library is in both the book and the game. The book contradicts itself, maybe because of misinformation to the owners, but Jacques explains that the library was imported from France, from the castle, the Chateau Rochemont. The owners say the library was imported from an English manor. So I'm not sure if by library they mean the books or the actual room itself. Either way, the important fireplace mantle that is described in the book actually isn't that important. It is important in the game though, because it's actually in the library. In the book, there is an entire wing dedicated to housing the people who work or live at the castle. And in the book, the owners live in that space along with Jacques and Dexter Egan. Unfortunately, you don't get to explore that area in the game. Or else if you do, you don't get to go into other people's rooms. Okay, the characters. Like I said, Bess and George get to accompany Nancy on this ski trip, and they do help a lot with Nancy's investigation.
Hello?
George, it's Nancy.
Great timing, Nancy. Bess and I were just saying how we wish we were out on the ski slopes with you.
The book and the game have a similarity for the owners of the castle, and that is Christy Lane. And that's all that's mentioned in the game. You don't see her or talk to her, you just know that Christy Lane's the owner and she's away.
What's more, the owner, Christy Lane, my father's friend, is away on business.
In the book, Christy Lane is married and her husband's name is Mark, and they're both in the book a lot. Christy is described as slender with a blonde, long ponytail, and Mark is a tall, friendly young man. The couple bought the castle a few years ago and have been working on renovating it. There are some areas that they have not opened up, like the Queen's Tower. They have a tan and white sheepdog named Gus, who is 8 years old and plays an integral part throughout the mystery. Dexter Egan is in the book, but he is described as being a short, stout, gray-haired man, grumpy kind of face. He is described as being the head caretaker for years, and he lives at the castle. He doesn't interact with the girls very much in the book, but he is the main contact in the game. He's pretty much running the castle.
Sorry about that inconvenience, but you're just gonna have to sit tight for a while. I'm the only one on duty while the owner's away. And around here it seems like even if it ain't broke, it still needs fixing.
We do learn Dexter's secret later on in the book, that he did go to jail for 10 years for silly things, but he was never related to Ezra Wickford, and he hasn't been at the castle for as long as he says he was. In the game, it's much more interesting. He has quite a history. Yes, he went to jail for a time, but in the game, he was adopted by Ezra Wickford, and he grew up in the castle, and that's why he's so knowledgeable on the castle and such a big help to Christie when she hires him again.
I was an orphan until Ezra Wickford came along and adopted me. But I left the castle when I was 16, and I never saw him again.
Jacques Brunet, in both the book and the game, he is described as being a champion skier. In the game, he was an Olympic skier, but it doesn't mention the Olympics in the books. He is the instructor for skiing in both. In the book, he is described as being breathtakingly handsome. A young man with thick, light brown hair, keen gray eyes, and strong, well-cut features.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. Je m'appelle Jacques Brunet.
It's often described what he wears in the book, such as having worn a bright charcoal and red Norwegian sweater, a purple ski stocking cap, and his picture is in the brochure.
Of course, I'll have to save some time to meet Jacques Brunet, the French ski instructor. Tell Bess she'll be the first to know if he's half as gorgeous in person as he looks on his website.
In the game, Jacques only wears one outfit. He wears khakis with a green shirt, and his build is very similar. However, in the game, he has a fiancée. In the book, he's totally single.
I am here for Isabelle, mon petit chou. She's an American studying at the university in Madison, and I've asked her to marry me.
Lisa is probably the closest match book to game comparison. In the book, the girls find Lisa in the lounge reading a magazine on a chair and is described as wearing a burgundy fleece pullover with black stretch pants. She's tall and athletic and has short brown hair.
Hi, I'm Lisa. Did you hear what happened?
In the book, she writes for Ski World magazine, and she wrote an article in the last edition of the magazine last fall for Butter Ridge Ski Resort. But then later in the book, it describes her as being a freelance writer, so I'm not sure if they meant to contradict that.
I'm just a humble photojournalist covering weird old mansions in the Midwest, and this place is one of the weirdest.
Both in the book and the game, she claims to only have known a little bit of Spanish from high school.
But don't quote me on that either. I only barely passed Spanish in high school.
Habla español?
Hardly.
Professor Hotchkiss is the most different from game to book. In the book, Professor Hotchkiss is a man from Massachusetts. He's found in an armchair in the lounge at first. He has thick white hair and talks very haughtily and dignified. Otherwise, the girls don't really make very much conversation with him throughout the book. In the game, Professor Hotchkiss is a female professor of French history.
Well, you probably know by now that I'm a scholar of French history. My specialty is Marie Antoinette.
Who wears colorful clothes, is a bit eccentric, crazy red hair, and interesting food choices.
Oh, right now, I have plenty of pre-packaged energy globules to keep me going. But tell Baxter that I am developing a powerful craving for couscous. Yes, couscous for dinner would be splendid.
There are several other guests in the book. Some of them you don't even get to really meet, but are described as being there. The mystery. During a tour after dinner, Mark Lane, the owner, takes the girls and a few other guests on a little tour. They stop at the library, which he unlocks and opens to reveal that it is vandalized, which is a complete shock to him. He quickly closes up the library, he calls the police, and after the police look around, Nancy offers her detective help. Nancy gets permission for herself, Bess, and George from the owners to go investigate the library as well. And they go in there with the key that they are given, and snoop around. They don't see much except, the books are scattered all over the floor. A bookcase is kind of teetering against an armchair. Now the girls notice a big gash in the wall where an oil painting was hung, and the oil painting is sitting on the floor up against the armchair. They peer into the hole, find nothing, look at the oil painting, and the oil painting is not of Marie Antoinette. It's of some fierce-looking gray-haired man in a suit. When the girls were exploring the library, they noticed that someone is actually hiding in there behind the drapes by the window. And they pretend to leave the library, shut the light off, and hide behind an armchair. The intruder flicks on a flashlight after a few minutes of making sure that he was alone, looks around the room one last time, and in the glow of the hallway light, they see that it is Dexter Egan. He was snooping the library. In the game, he has every right to be in the library. He walks in, turns off the alarm, and snoops around for a little bit looking for something that he has misplaced.
Okay, I hear you. Darn you, crazy old man. I know you hid that thing around here somewhere. The least you could have done was left me a hint. I don't have time to clean this up.
It turns out in the book, he was just looking for something as well, trying to get an idea of what might have been taken, and he's not the vandal. Nancy does pick up an interesting red book that is written in French from the library because it looks cool, and asks the owner's permission if she could borrow it. Because Nancy did take a few lessons in French during high school, so she thought she'd give it a try. In one event of the book, Lisa does get locked behind the door that leads to the staircase that leads to nowhere, as if someone locked her in, and she makes a big fuss about it, which we learn later that she did that to herself to throw suspicion that she is a vandal. Now in the book, the girls do get to go skiing and take a few lessons from Jacques as well outside. In the book, Nancy decides to make one last ski run, and the operator at the base of the mountain tells Nancy, when you get to the top, tell the other operator that you are the last one on the lift. However, Nancy doesn't make it to the top. The ski lift shuts off right in between destinations. So she is stuck up on the ski lift for like a good 15 minutes or so. And even though she calls for help, everyone else is gone. And she finally decides to let go of her ski poles, unbuckle herself, and drop 20 feet down into the soft snow. She does ski off without her poles, but she makes it part of the way down the mountain, and Gus the sheepdog helps find her. The ski patrol comes and picks her up, and that's the cold incident that Nancy encounters here. In the game, Nancy just gets locked outside and has to use the ski lift to signal for help.
What the? What's going on out here? Is that you, Nancy? Come inside. It's freezing out here. What kind of a stunt was that, Missy?
I was freezing. That stunt was my version of an SOS.
Well then, what can I say except good thinking?
There are also 20 snowmobiles parked alongside the side of the castle where the Queen's Tower is. And Nancy and the girls go up to investigate the option to take some out. And that's when they stumble upon a person in a black snowsuit trying to wiggle out a stone from the exterior side of the Queen's Tower. Nancy startles the person, who she can't recognize. The person hops aboard a snowmobile, knocking another one over onto Nancy's leg. They get away, but Nancy picks up a key that they dropped, and that's the key that she has Bess go and try, and that is the key that unlocks the door that Lisa got trapped behind. However, Nancy does get hurt from that incident, and a snowmobile falls on her leg, so she has a very badly banged up and bruised leg and can't use it for a few days, which does slow her down in chasing after culprits when she suspects they are eavesdropping. The ending. Caution, spoilers ahead for both the book and the game. In both stories, there is banging and weird noises heard at night. Nancy and her friends investigate at night, end up going to a dead end where they hear the sounds coming from the other side of the wall, but they don't know how to get there. The girls go down to the basement where they hear some sounds, and away from the locker room is another hallway that leads to a complete dead end. It's there that they find an S-shaped doorknob attached to a door that is completely blending in with the wall, and it's locked. Nancy picks the lock, and they are able to go in, which leads to a closet. One wall of the closet is a wood-oaked panel with carved feathers on it, and they find a hidden button. It opens up a sliding panel that goes up, which leads to what appears to be another dead end, but when they look closely, it's a narrow door with a latch. Behind it, a small square landing, and there's another ornate doorknob. Opening it reveals the round room of the Queen's Tower, with large walls covered and embossed in gold. Of course, they find Jacques there with a hammer. Knocking on the walls, trying to pull out these decorative feathers that are carved along all the walls. Cornered, the girls get him to confess that he is looking for some letters, like handwritten letters. He describes that his great-grandfather, on his deathbed, told Jacques this story.
The tower first belonged to the Chateau Rochemont in France. When Ezra Wickford bought the tower, my great-grandfather was the master carpenter in charge of dismantling it and preparing it for shipment. One day, when he was working alone, he found a secret compartment in one of the walls.
Then what happened?
Inside, he found an old journal with a royal crest on the cover and a medallion with a strange blue stone in it. But he heard other carpenters coming, so he hid the medallion in his pocket and sealed the journal back in the compartment. Before he could get back to study the journal and return the medallion, the tower was dismantled and shipped to America. He never learned who the journal belonged to or what it said. I was his only great-grandson. On his deathbed, he gave me the medallion and told me the whole story. He begged me to come here to Wisconsin to find the journal and return it to France.
What did he think the journal contained that was so important?
The journal bore a royal seal. It must have belonged to Marie Antoinette, because she used to visit the tower during the Revolution. So perhaps it contains her confessions, or perhaps it contains proof of her innocence. Either way, the contents of that journal could change French history forever. If I can find it and return it to France, perhaps I can make up for my failure at the Olympics.
In the game, it's actually a journal. The difference between the journal and the letters is that the letters are actually written by someone important who is close to Marie Antoinette. In the game, the journal actually belonged to Marie Antoinette. The girls convince Jacques to confess all of this to the owners, and the girls are with him when he does so in the book. Nancy gets permission from the owners to get a master key and go and snoop in a few of the suspects' rooms. They snoop Professor Hotchkiss's room, but there's nothing of importance there. Lisa is the villain in both stories. She also sneaks into Nancy Besson-George's bedroom at night and steals the red book. Inside the red book is a note from a Rochelle, which hints at the treasure. When the girls snoop Lisa's room, Bess finds Lisa's camera bag with the letters stuffed inside them. And that's when Nancy tries to translate some of them. She's not a very good translator, but she does understand enough to know that the letters belong to a Rochelle, who may have been a lady-in-waiting to Marie Antoinette. But she learns that Marie often visited that tower, and it was her personal writing room. But Marie was very fearful of people finding her most valuable treasure, a very large diamond, and hid it in the tower. However, when Nancy goes up to the tower by herself, that's where Lisa is. She sees Lisa coming down from a ladder holding a pendant with a large diamond on it from the chandelier.
Hi, Lisa. How did you get in here?
I followed you, of course.
In both stories, Lisa complains about not getting paid enough for her work. So her motive is just for money.
Well, I belong in the lap of luxury, and that diamond's gonna get me there.
Nancy and Lisa kind of circle each other and throw a few karate moves at each other while Lisa is confessing her story. Lisa does know some French and translated the letters incorrectly to think that it meant in the library, just like in the book, or in the game.
Why did you have to vandalize that beautiful library?
Just a little translation mix-up. When I read the message from Hotchkiss's medallion, I thought it meant Diamond of Misery in the library.
In the book, Lisa does not pepper spray Nancy, but they do throw a few karate moves at each other.
Well, maybe this time you'll learn.
My eyes!
Don't worry, my spicy devil villain venom won't last for long.
And it's Gus the sheepdog who comes bounding up the stairs and pounces on Lisa. And that's how Lisa is caught.
I've got to stop her.
Ah! Help! Get me out of here!
In the game, the tower also includes a dungeon, moving steps, and a very important stained glass window.
I got the 2 messages from the stained glass window, but then what?
The treasure in the game is the large diamond, but also Marie's journal. In the game, medallions have a very important role in finding this treasure. The medallions are never mentioned in the book. Now, a few differences between the book and the game. There is an incident where on the spiral steps up to the tower, a board was sawed off partially and George kind of falls through it, but is able to drop down to the ground safely. There is a secret garden outside and a maintenance shed, which Nancy Drew investigates. There's also a secret study in the library that belongs to Ezra Wickford and had a lot of secrets hiding in there. In the book, Nancy Drew never takes anyone's dinner orders. The castle is well staffed.
So, you go up to Hotchkiss's room and see what she wants for dinner. She's not answering her phone.
The food in the book is great because it's described several times. The girls get blueberry pancakes, bacon and eggs, and fruit for breakfast. And dinner is like grilled chicken, salads, vegetables, and mashed potatoes and stuff like that. They also get hot cider and hot chocolate at the skating event. Where in the game...
Oh, baby back ribs, yes. Oh, chili cheese dog, and fried bologna sandwich. I'm not usually much of a meat eater, but very well. 50 drumsticks, please. Chicken, that is. Cluck, cluck.
And Nancy doesn't get to eat. In the book, Nancy doesn't take any fingerprints, or set off any alarms, or climb through the air ducts, or finds hidden tunnels behind the elevator shaft. Professor Hotchkiss was interested in looking for these letters as well because he heard a rumor about it. However, he is not a culprit or a villain for doing anything bad. Jacques gives him permission at the end of the book to translate and publish the letters before the letters get returned to France, because Mark and Christie, the owners, decide to do that. They decide to send the letters back to the French government. In the game, Professor Hotchkiss is given permission to translate the Journal of Marie Antoinette before it goes back to France.
Professor Hotchkiss is thrilled because the French government has granted her permission to publish Marie's journal in the U.S. before it gets returned to France. This ought to help prove her theory about Marie's character once and for all.
So I'd recommend reading the book for fun and then playing the game and seeing the differences yourself, because they're both very close, but there are a lot of differences. They're both a lot of fun.